It was 40 years ago today, April 3rd, that Dr. Martin Luther King gave his most famous speech to the mountaintop. Radio host Tavis Smiley broadcast his show live from Mason Temple this morning to commemorate with those who knew him best.
From PRI, Public Radio International in Memphis, Tennessee, I'm Tavis Smiley. I've been humbled to be in this city this week commemorating the life and legacy of the person who I regard as the greatest American we have ever produced, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Ms. Cotton, let me ask you before I advance what it feels like for you to be back in this sacred and consecrated space on this day 40 years later.
I have mixed feelings. I have feelings that we ought to talk about Dr. King's really deep involvement in working for people on the lowest rung of the economic ladder, the sanitation workers, and that he died in the midst of doing that kind of work. But I also would like us to focus on the fact that we were enmeshed in putting together the Poor People's Campaign, and that sometimes we ought to focus on that as well and look at what that was about.
I was one of two people among his close advisors, sometimes called kitchen cabinet, that was adamantly, strongly opposed to his returning back to Memphis.
What I want to know, and I suspect folk in this audience want to know, is how you felt not taking that phone call that came to you hours before he was assassinated.
But I've asked myself over the years, what was I doing that was so... This was Martin Luther King, Jr. You know, you heard that expression, familiarity sometimes breeds contempt. I got so close to him, it's like, well, he called, I didn't have to take the call. Yes, and honestly, all from 1968 until this day, and I'm now 77 years of age, not every day, but many days, I ask myself, why didn't I take the call?
Talk to me about how he was being treated and written about in the media at the time that he comes back to Memphis to try to get this march right the second time.
Perhaps I should start by saying this. At that time, the New York Times, the editor of National News was Claude Sitton, a very prominent journalist, comes from the South. And he said to me, and giving me the assignment to come to Memphis, he said, Dr. King has got to be stopped. He said, if Dr. King is not stopped, he's going to cause a bloodbath. This is your editor at the liberal New York Times.
Yes,
and these were his instructions. As a matter of fact, his final word to me was, and I want you to go down there and nail him. But when I called New York to tell them what had happened, I don't want to say that my editors knew, but when I got on the phone, they were ready.
The afterlife of his life in the memory that we now enact here shows that there's a sense in which he's very much alive.
Hey, thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you for the hospitality. We celebrate all those persons who came on the program both hours to be with us, but I want to give the last word, and in whatever way he wants to close us out in this last minute, to Harry Belafonte, Dr. King's lifelong friend and confidant. Mr. Belafonte, what words do you have for us on this 40th anniversary?
He brings to me a reaffirmation that the deeper truth of Christianity and the deeper truth of the voice of Christ as a revolutionary and as a practitioner of love resides in all of us if we will only tap into it and permit it to be expressed.